Hi friends, Pastor Sam here. This is a hard time. In the midst of a pandemic, when we must stay away from each other, and yet our news feeds are filled with information about people who are struggling. It's easy to get caught up in our own economic news if we have stocks, to watch the stock market go down and down and down, or if we have relatives who are unemployed, to feel deeply for them, and this is all appropriate. You and I should be in prayer for folks who are facing economic devastation, especially those people who have lost their jobs, who are worried about putting food on the table or remaining sheltered. We had contact with a family this week as a congregation, in which a woman and a child were about to be put out on the street. We were able to intervene. But this is one person. And as important as this one person, this one child is, there are so many others who need to be helped. And certainly it's a social service agency task, and certainly it's a governmental task, but this also is a test of our own generosity. It has struck me that perhaps it is worth reviewing some of the economic principles we find in the Bible. We don't have enough time to look at all of them, but we can at least look at some key ones, some key principles that we might keep in mind during this time period. For example, there is the Garden of Eden. We recognize that the bounty of Eden given to Adam and Eve, man and mother of all living, and to the animals, that this bounty was meant to be shared. When there are too many extremes between those who are poor and those who have wealth, it seems to me that we should not be questioning the goodness of God. What we should be is questioning the goodness of our own hearts. God has made a beautiful world, a world of bounty, when there are extremes, when there is exploitation, when there is a lack of vision for sharing what we have. That's when the rich get too rich and the poor get too poor. When the economic order is created, structured to create extremes. When it creates this myth that to be righteous is to be wealthy, and to be a sinner, there's something wrong with you if you're not wealthy. Well, that's human sin at work. That would be a biblical economic principle. During the time of the judges, a social policy which we're not sure was ever put into place was that every 50 years, all the debts would be cleaned away, all the lands would be returned to people, that is, ancestral lands, and the whole economy would reboot. In that way, the extremes would be overcome. And that way, people would have places to work again and would have homes again. It would all start over. In the time of Jeremiah the prophet, we hear about a contrarian who invests on the basis of hope. The mighty Babylonian army has surrounded Jerusalem. Land is now useless because if you bought it, you would lose it to the Babylonians. And yet at that particular moment, Jeremiah buys a small piece of land. He does so as a symbol of hope. Certainly as the stock market goes down, and as some would predict our real estate market will eventually also collapse, there are investment opportunities, investment for the future, investment as signs of hope. And perhaps we can invest prudently in people and in our environment and in a better future. And then we come to the Lord's Prayer. Jesus, in that prayer, gives us some sound economic principles, guideposts by which we know whether or not our economy is just. Remember that Jesus in the Lord's Prayer talked about the kingdom or the realm of God. And it was meant to be a social, political, and economic order different than that which was being led and advocated by the Romans. First, if you recall, Jesus talked about giving us this day our daily bread. Think about that. Some of us have not just our daily bread, but plenty of resources to take care of our daily bread forever, for a very long time at least, way beyond our own lifespans, and yet there are other people who do not have daily bread. To pray, give us our daily bread, is both to say that we trust God will give us our daily bread, but also to be intentional, to share our daily bread with others who do not have it, that we will not hoard so other people can merely survive, that we will live simply so that other people can simply live. To pray for daily bread is to pray that a basic economic principle be put in place, that each one of us has his own vine, his own fig tree under which to rest and to enjoy God's bounty. None too rich, none too poor. But this whole business of forgiving debts, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors, the Roman Empire extracted high taxes from the nations it conquered, and this meant that money was being sucked out of those countries. The rich would pay tribute, and to pay that tribute, they would take the money from lower classes, and down it would go, each person giving up their money to the class above it. And finally, the very poor would have to go into debt, and they'd run out of money, and then those who were above them taking their money would also go into debt, and debt froze the entire economy. When Jesus talked about forgiving debt, he meant a strategy for jump-starting the entire economy so that people would go back to work again, so that people would eat again, so people would buy and sell again. The economy would come roaring back. Forgiving debt is a way to free up people to reinvest in the economic order, and everybody benefits. Finally, Jesus urges us to pray that we not be led into temptation to do evil. Evil is what exploits people. Evil is what creates oppression and injustice. Evil is what locks people into so much debt that they cannot engage the economic order. Evil is what we do when we fail to love, when we fail to have compassion. And so Jesus offers us a formula for the present to judge it. Is everybody getting their daily bread? If not, there's a problem. There's a problem in this country. There's a problem in the world economy. Are debts being forgiven to free up the economy? Are people in too much debt? Well, that's also an issue. And finally, when we do planning, we don't fully plan our economy, but we should plan to have an economy which is robust and which is not exploitative of the very poor. Jesus, and indeed the rest of the Bible, teach us how to live by God's principles so that all of us benefit from this good world that God has created. As you read the economic news, think more deeply about what God has in mind, and actually what a restored economy on biblical principles would probably look like. It might be very different. God bless you all. Stay safe. Amen.